Love you,
That was,
brother. Thank you for this.
hey, you too, buddy. Did that help? Did that conversation help a little bit? Help you? Okay, good. Hello, and welcome back to Bearded Bible Brothers. Glad to have you with us today. Today, we're going to jump right into a conversation Matt and I were in the middle of. So, here we go. You can pick sides all you want. You can demonize the other. You can moralize the other. But at the same time, you're going to have to come back to yourself and go, what is it that I agree with here? And I think that goes even more to being informed, which every time I think of informed, it takes me back to that opening scene in Newsroom with Jeff Daniels. Did you ever see that? Oh, man. Language aside, he nailed that. I mean, he truly nailed that. And so I think it's a sobering reality when we're able to look at ourselves and go, this is where I'm at. This is what I think. And this is my opinion based off of what I know. So, because a lot of people speak out of what they don't know, right?
Yes, or what they think they know, which
yes,
that Denzel Washington quote that's been going around the internet, he said it a long time ago, but when
what
he
did he
said,
say?
if you don't watch the news or read the papers, then you're uninformed.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you
yeah,
do
yeah.
watch the news and
Yep.
read the newspapers, then you're misinformed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, thank
Yep.
God we live in a time where there are independent reporters and journalists now on
Yeah.
Twitter and Telegram and YouTube, that we don't have to just depend on what the big three or the big 12 or however many of them alphabet soup news agencies there are anymore, because none of them are reporting the truth. They're all reporting
Mm-hmm.
party lines and opinions.
Yep.
And there's a whole lot of truth that's coming out from people on the ground in both locations, I mean, all over the world, not just these two particular locations, Israel and Gaza, but all over the world, that
Mm-hmm.
we can find out what's actually happening in specific places. You have to know where to look to get that kind of news.
Sure.
But thank God it's at least available. We're not just
Yeah.
stuck to the 5 o'clock primetime news hour.
Mm-hmm. And relying upon them to give us a take on what's going on.
Right.
Right. You're actually, and you've even been watching some of those videos. I've watched a few of them, as I said, but you've seen some of these videos, and the few I've seen are enough to just rip your heart out.
Yep.
But what has been your overall reaction to this?
So I'm going to answer that in two phases. One is my overall reaction to what happened on the 7th and Israel's response. And then I'm going to answer the secondary question of my reaction to the world's response. Yeah, the world's
All right.
response and the faith-based community's responses.
Okay.
So my reaction to what happened on the 7th is pretty universal with everybody else's who isn't foolishly denying what happened or how it happened. Pretty much everybody that I've seen unanimously agrees that it was atrocious beyond words, that it absolutely does not justify, it cannot be justified by anything. Even the those who hold the faulty perspective that it's a complicated situation and blah blah blah, nothing justifies what happened in southern Israel on the 7th. Absolutely nothing. They found cocaine in the trucks that were used by the terrorists, so that they were high, so that they could continue hard into their
Wow.
actions. Cocaine, for
Wow.
anybody who is not aware, not quite as effective as crystal meth, but if you shoot somebody who's on cocaine in the shoulder or in the leg, they keep coming at you. They don't stop. It fuels what we in the faith community would call the flesh reaction. The I want food, sex, hate. It fuels
The
everything
carnal,
fleshly
the
while
carnal
numbing
desires.
physical sensations.
Yeah, the carnal
So
desires.
They found bags and bags of coke in the
Wow.
vehicles. They found manuals on how to torture and how to do this that dated back over a year. Um, interviews or interrogations with some of the captured terrorists proved that this was over 2 years in the planning. They found, I don't remember if it was in a vehicle or in one of the burnt out houses, but they found lists. I just saw this yesterday. They found lists of Arabic phrases translated into Hebrew. President Herzog of Israel just presented this yesterday, of Arabic phrases translated into Hebrew so that they could say what they needed to say. Phrases including, take off your pants, where's the leader of the kibbutz, get on the ground, etc., because they were practicing how to do what they did. Nothing justifies what happened on October 7th.
Wow.
Now,
And they did it. Now they did. Now I definitely want to hear the other part of that question, the second part of your reaction. But correct me if please help me understand the layout here. So I know that they attacked a music festival, and they were attacking kibbutz and everything. But was it just the music festival, or was there a full-on breach of the southern border?
Oh, it was a full breach. So what happened?
Okay.
They started with a barrage of rocket fire into southern Israel, which unfortunately is not altogether uncommon.
Uncommon, right?
That happens every 6 or 9 months. It was a heavier barrage than normal. So because it was Simchat Torah, it was a holiday, and because of the rocket barrage, people went into their bomb shelters or just, if they weren't in direct fire, basically ignored it, thinking it was the Iron Dome system is going to catch the missiles that are headed toward populated areas. If for the sake of commerce and stuff and economics, if it's going to land in an empty field, they let it land. It's not worth launching a, I don't know, $400,000 rocket to intercept it. But they're going to let the Iron Dome system catch the rockets, and it's no big deal. But in a matter of hours, so many thousands of rockets were launched that it almost completely, or did completely, I don't recall, deplete the Iron Dome system. But because it was a holiday and because of the barrage, people went underground and went into their safe rooms and their bomb shelters, which allowed the terrorists to blow holes through the border wall. For some unknown reason, the all the sensors on that wall, it's supposed to be a high-tech wall, all the sensors failed to go off to let them know that people were breaching the wall. There's been a lot of false news that there was a cyber attack on those systems. From everything that I've seen, there's no evidence of a cyber attack. We're not really sure why those alerts didn't go off, but regardless, they breached the wall in small portions, and then they got bulldozers and blasted massive holes in the walls.
Wow. That sounds like great source for just conspiracy theorists to talk and decide about, well, this is how this happened, or this is why that happened.
Yeah.
But the fact that this
like
happened, it's happened though.
Yeah.
This is
just like
happened.
After September 11th, 2001, it took years of dialogue to figure out what had happened and what had gone wrong, and why the intelligence community hadn't, why every different intelligence agency had bits of the puzzle, but nobody was talking to one another. So this conversation of why did it happen? What was the breach of security? That conversation is going to be playing out for the months and maybe years.
Very much so.
But as far as what happened on the ground, they blew so many holes in the border wall that a couple thousand terrorists came through, and then they sent word back for non-terrorists, just Jew-hating Gazan men of fighting age to come on through, because we've got enough weaponry for you. They said that they brought enough weaponry to kill 5,000 Jews.
Wow.
We've got enough weapons. We've got time. Nobody's coming to stop us. Come on in. And so more and more and more Jew-hating Gazan men came through the border, even if they weren't trained and they weren't originally part of the plan. And then
Wow.
they ended up taking and having complete control of multiple cities, multiple kibbutzim,
Mm-hmm.
um, people that were in their bomb shelters or in their safe rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and they couldn't get them to come out by threats. They just burned the building down.
Right. By the
Um,
way, for our listeners, why don't you explain what a kibbutz is?
a kibbutz is a compound has a negative connotation, but it's
Right.
a protected community
Yeah.
led by elders
Mm-hmm.
that exist to look out for one another. They initially started before Israel was remade as a nation in 1948, when Jews started moving to that land at the time known as Palestine,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to get into why it was called that. Um, but when they started moving there, they had to set up almost gated communities, but protected communities because Arab raiders would come in and attack them, and there were plenty of people that didn't want them in the land, so they had to have some form of defense. So throughout Israel, south and north, all over the nation, there are kibbutzim, which is
Yeah.
plural for kibbutz,
Right.
of
I am. It's
protected
always
communities.
plural. Yep. Yeah, I've always called it a walled community, basically
Sure.
a defended community. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
All right. So they're going into all of these kibbutzim, and they're wow, that's a full on onslaught. And the fact that they telling all of these Jew-hating civilians basically, hey, come on in, let's have at it. Let's have a, what are those things called? You go to a room and you start breaking stuff. I don't know what they're, some sort of crash party or demolishing
Raping,
party.
killing, murdering,
They're going,
beheading, burning.
yes.
Yep. A lot more of the news has focused on what happened at that concert out in the desert. One of the captured terrorists said they knew that that concert was going to be taking place that day. That's why they specifically targeted it.
Oh, okay.
But you also don't see a whole bunch of the news taking place about what happened in the neighborhoods and in the kibbutzim because, well, there's lots of reasons why. So,
and I know that there were, well, excuse me, I should say I've heard, I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard that there were American civilians at the film music festival, and that there are, of course, other Americans both in Gaza and in Israel that they're trying to get out. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. All right. Because that's what I've heard, but I haven't been able to verify any of that. Because as I said, I think I said this in a previous podcast, if I'm going to verify something, I usually try to find 2, 3, maybe even 4 sources that are saying basically the same thing that can agree upon each other.
And it was supposed to be today, our last night, the Middle East yesterday, because it's at the time we're recording this on the, what is today, the 16th?
16th.
It's 8:40 p.m. Over there right now. So at 9 a.m. their time, the Rafah border crossing between southern Gaza and Egypt was supposed to be opened for Americans to get out of Gaza.
I heard about that.
I haven't checked the news. I haven't caught up on the news. I don't know if that actually took place or not.
Okay. Because I heard that there are times where they say it'll be open and then it ends up not being open.
Yes, because Hamas, the government / terrorist organization of Gaza, is putting roadblocks in the way for Americans and local population Gazans, so they can't move south. So here's the thing that that no one in the mainstream media wants to say out loud.
What's that?
Hamas likes when Gazans get killed. They don't care about their local population. The more civilians get killed, the more of a black eye Israel gets on the world stage.
Now you're just talking about a warlord.
Yeah, absolutely. To the point where not just this war, but countless times in the past, Israel is the most humane military machine on the planet. Before they blow up any building, They drop leaflets.
Yeah.
They're on the local radio stations. They're
Yeah.
texting and calling every phone number in Gaza that they have.
Right.
They drop an unexploded ordnance or they knock on the building, and
Mhm.
basically it makes a horrible, horrible noise on the roof. And it's a warning to the people inside, get
Residents,
out.
get
We're
out.
going to drop a bomb on this building in 30-ish minutes.
Right. Okay.
But
Yeah.
the government of Iran, Hamas, which is the elected government of Gaza in 2006,
Okay.
and others all tell the residents, don't leave. They're just doing psychological warfare. They're not actually going to hit you. And then the ones who do try and leave, they actively set up roadblocks. Yesterday, there was a bomb on one of the two. So Israel said, we're going to create two roads, two corridors from northern Gaza to southern Gaza where civilians can get out because we are going to decimate northern Gaza. Get
Wow.
out. So they made two humanitarian corridors that were going to be
Mhm.
safe,
Mhm.
and Hamas bombed one of them to try and make it look like Israel had bombed it, to make Israel look bad. But if you look at the video of it, no projectile lands and blows up the road. The road just spontaneously blows up, meaning it was an IED or something like that.
Already there.
Right there.
Wow.
They're killing their own civilians to try and make Israel look bad.
Wow.
That's just what they do. They take all of the money from humanitarian aid efforts and they pocket it and they use it to buy weapons. There's actually video from, I think it was 2012, 2013, of them taking water pipes that had been shipped to Gaza
Mhm.
for the sake of providing water to the citizens,
Mhm.
chopping up the water pipes and turning them into rockets. This is just what they do.
Wow. It. Oh wow. 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 So, what is your reaction then to this? I mean, I'm already, don't get me wrong, I'm already hearing your passion and I'm already hearing some of your thoughts on this. But if you were to say something quite direct as to what your reaction to this whole thing is, what would that be?
From the way from the actual war of Israel and Gaza right now, or the world's reaction to it.
Either. Let's do both.
So Israel is knocking it out of the park. They're doing a brilliant job. The way
Okay.
you restore um, safety to Israel is through deterrence.
Hmm.
It's what Teddy Roosevelt said a long time ago: speak softly and carry a big stick. Right now,
Right.
their big
Right.
stick was threatened. And
Hmm.
in the Middle Eastern culture, in the Middle Eastern world, if you show any amount of grace, that's received as weakness.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You
Yeah. Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
flex. You have to prove strong to
Hmm.
create deterrence.
Right.
It's
Which
exactly
is
what America has done countless times in the past.
right.
So Israel has to hit Gaza and hit it hard. They
Hmm.
have to shock and awe in
Hmm.
order to end this as quickly with as few casualties as possible. Military casualties on both sides, civilian casualties on both sides. The way you minimize all casualties is you hit hard and you hit fast,
Hmm.
and you deter Hezbollah and the IRGC that are in mobilizing troops in Syria. And that's a whole other conversation. The northern war that's about to kick off or is gently, slowly ramping up and kicking off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Israel was forced into a position that they have to do exactly what they're doing, and they're
Mm.
doing it brilliantly.
Mm.
Now, Israel a few days ago got a really bad press globally for
Okay.
having cut off electricity and water to Gaza.
Oh,
No one
excuse me.
decided,
Yep.
no one in mainstream media asked the question of why they did
Why?
that.
Yeah.
They did it to make life difficult for the civilians, to motivate them to leave. They did it so they didn't have to kill civilians. If I cut off your power and I cut off your water, you might be more inclined to leave your home. And yes, it's a bummer that you have to leave your home. I get that. But would you rather leave your home and walk to the south where there are family members who can host you, or would you rather die when the building collapses? And keep this in mind, every single place in Gaza, there's a city
Yeah.
above ground and there's an
Okay.
underground city.
Mm,
There's the
yeah.
one above that looks
Right.
like poverty,
Mm-hmm.
because it is, because the Gazans, none of the humanitarian aid that comes from the EU or the UN or anyone else ever actually makes it to the population, because it
Yeah.
all goes underground to the terrorists who are living high on the hog
Yep.
and couldn't care less about the
Yeah.
civilians. Again, I have not heard this with this war, but in previous conflicts, there have
Uh-huh.
been verified reports of when Israel drops the leaflets and calls people and texts people and knocks on top of the buildings.
Yeah.
There have been verified reports that when the citizens of Gaza try to leave the building, Hamas terrorists shoot them because they want people in the building. They want people dead so that Israel gets a black eye on the international stage.
This is making me think of two things. One, I heard a newscast, I can't remember who it was, talking about how the UN would call the loss of water, electricity, and everything a great humanitarian problem, and would be a black eye to Israel for what they've done. And then also, now I was not aware until it was a while after I saw it, but years ago, there was a documentary came out, but I was not aware that there was a lot of conflict over this documentary called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed by Ben Stein. Did you ever see it? Okay. I actually saw it in theaters. It was a 1 day sort of premiere sort of thing. It was in theaters for. And I went and saw it and I thought, you know what, there's some really interesting factors involved here. Now, Ben Stein was specifically looking at the educational system here in the United States, okay, and how specifically, especially college level, you weren't allowed to talk about intelligent design. If you were, you could lose tenure and you could end up losing your job and being made to look like a freak among the academic community.
Right.
But there was something about the documentary that really got me thinking, and that was he started seeing this in light of Germany, specifically Berlin, and how that wall divided things and how things happened on the west side and how things happened on the east side. And there was a lot of, I don't know if he did it on purpose, but there was definitely a lot of psychology surrounding what that wall did and how it caused people to respond. Because when you look at something, this is just even a basic feature of storytelling, but when you have characters and you're trying to decide what kind of character they have, what kind of personality they have, you have them face something and you just figure out what the response is going to be, right? But yet when you're looking at this, you can see the same dynamic. You see the same psychology at work. And it's really quite fascinating to see it at work. And so with that said, what would you say would need to be the next step for resolving this issue between Israel and Hamas in this current conflict? Now, I know there's been many conflicts over the years. There's been many problems over the years, but for this specific conflict, how do you think it should be or could be or end up being resolved in any case?
What needs to happen is Hamas needs to be completely eradicated. Israel needs to retake over governance of the Gaza Strip, which, for the record, they completely pulled all Israeli force, all governance out in 2004. So the whole concept of occupation is a fallacy. They have been self-governance since 2004. In 2006, they elected Hamas to be their governor, the government. 2007, Hamas actually took power, and it's been abysmal since then.
So let me highlight that. So you're saying there has been no Israeli occupation of that area for nearly 20 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
And so Hamas needs to be completely eradicated. Israel needs to retake control of that region because the fact, and I hope our listeners hear, I am not spouting a single opinion. I'm sharing facts, verifiable. We have documentation, we have video evidence, not doctored, falsified video, but true. A lot of the video was put out by Hamas themselves.
Oh, wow.
But we have a whole bunch of evidence to the things that I'm sharing.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I think, over 20% of the population of Israel is Muslim Arab. They are absolutely free to practice their religion. They are free to work, to come, to go, to do. And the vast majority of Muslim, Arab, Palestinians living in Israel right now to openly acknowledge on camera that they much prefer living under Israeli governance than under the Palestinian Authority, and
Oh,
much,
wow.
much prefer it over those who are living in Gaza under Hamas
Wow.
rule.
Wow. Okay.
There
Well,
are
then there's
countless
that.
videos online. Hananya Naftali has quite a few of just man on the street interviews
Mhm.
with Muslim Arabs, Palestinians living in Israel under Israeli governance, and
Mhm.
they love it, and they openly say that.
Wow.
And so Israel
Wow.
needs to retake the Gaza Strip,
Mhm.
rebuild it after they're done completely eradicating Hamas, rebuild it and retake governance of it and
Mhm.
bring it back into Israel so that the innocent population there can say the same thing.
Mhm.
So the innocent Gazans can say, we lived under Hamas. It was dreadful. We now live under Israeli governance and we have freedom of speech. We have right to practice our religion. We have free press. We pay our taxes and everything's great.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they need to do it quickly
Mhm.
before Hamas and the IRGC, the Israeli Revolutionary Guard Corps, that's mobilizing in Syria, before the northern front gets any bigger.
Oh, okay. Well, what's
And
going on
that's
in the
another
northern?
factor to this.
Yeah, go
Hezbollah
ahead. Go ahead
in
and bring that up.
Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit different of what's going on the northern border than in the south with Gaza. Hamas indoctrinates everybody that they can. Hezbollah is a mafioso political party / terrorist organization in Lebanon, but most Lebanese are not pro Hezbollah.
Oh, okay.
Very much the
Okay.
same situation as in Iran. The
Okay.
government of Iran and the Ayatollahs are very, very anti Israel, while at the exact same time, the vast majority of the populace of Iran are very pro Israel.
Hmm.
It's a weird dichotomous situation in both places. But regardless, Hezbollah is launching anti-tank missiles into northern Israel. Israel has cleared out the towns and the kibbutzim that are on the very northern part of the country for the sake of their safety.
Uh-huh.
And the IRGC, the Iranians, are mobilizing in Syria
Okay.
and getting ready to open up a second / third front to this war. But they're also doing it all very slowly, gently, for lack of a better word. I mean, war is not gentle, but they're doing
Mm.
it cautiously,
Yeah, okay.
and
Yeah.
which is why I think personally, I think they're waiting for the opportune moment, and I think that if Israel hits Gaza hard enough and fast enough, they might still have time to deter Hezbollah and the IRGC. It might still work for deterrence that the northern border um, remains safe and that a full war doesn't break out up there as well.
Wow.
But we'll see.
I could see how these events, could be very indicative of biblical prophecy coming to effect. Um, I don't say it is, simply because some of the prophecies that we've even talked about on the podcast, some of our earliest podcasts, made it clear that these people were working together, that there were nations coming together to attack. And so far as I've understand what I've heard you say, and what I've understood from the sources I've read and listened to, that there is no real unified approach to attacking Israel. But
And that's one of several issues with a lot of people are asking the question, is this the Gog of Magog war?
Interesting.
Even secular Jews in Israel are asking their religious neighbors if this is Gog of Magog.
Gog and Magog. I don't think it, if I may say from my own personal opinion, that I don't think it is, based on what scripture actually says about the Gog and Magog war. And so I don't think it can be applied to that. I had thought I heard something along those lines, that question was being asked. I couldn't pin it down yet. So, okay, you've confirmed it for me. So that is being asked, at least, and being discussed to some degree.
Right. In one of his response speeches to what happened on the 7th, I think Bibi Netanyahu himself quoted a passage in Ezekiel 38:39. And then one of the other government officials, I don't remember who it was, quoted from Joel chapter 3. They were not saying that that is what's happening right now. They were borrowing the language to say how devastating their response is going to be. But there's several very key things that tell us clearly this is not Gog of Magog. First of all, Damascus is still standing, which is a prerequisite. Damascus has to be demolished before that takes place. This is not, it didn't come from the north. This is not the king of the north came down. This is Hamas came up from the south. Plenty of people are trying to make the argument that all of their funding and stuff came from the north, and their training came from the north. Okay, you can make that argument. Israel is not living in peace and secure without walls. I know that many pre-trib rapture evangelicals make that argument that Israel is safe. I think that's completely erroneous. The definition of a kibbutz is a walled, protected community. Hamas had to literally blow through a wall to do what they did on the 7th. That's and not to mention what we've talked about in one of our very first episodes. The only places where Gog of Magog are mentioned in the scriptures, it's mentioned in Genesis and Second Chronicles in genealogies, but the only places where it's talked about with any length are Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Revelation chapter 20, which clearly happens after most of Revelation takes place. So I personally, I've been spending a lot of time on this question over the last week. Why is everybody so fixated on this being Gog of Magog? And I think the reason is because everybody wants the hope. If this were Gog of Magog, then that means God shows up and shows off on behalf of Israel, and it's all going to be okay. I'm sorry, but that's simply not the case. That doesn't mean God won't show up and show off. That doesn't mean Israel won't be successful. It does mean that this doesn't match the prophetic, the prophecies we read in Scripture. It very well could pave the way for that prophecy and others, but this isn't it.
Wow. Well, I hope our listeners are able to take this episode for what it is, and just our honest approach to this, our as factual approach as possible. I appreciate Matt being willing to discuss this. You're far more learned on this subject than I am, to be quite honest, especially with what's been going on over in the Middle East. But suffice it to say, I think one quote that I think could sum this up, because there's the concern that there would be people turned off by this episode. There would people concerned that people might think differently of us, but and that's fair, that's fine. But at the same time, there's a quote I think that captures it very well, and it was a quote that says that in order to think, you have to risk being offensive. And I'm not saying that Jordan Peterson is supporting or condoning what we're talking about. That is not in any way, shape, or form what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that what he had to say, I think is crucial to anyone being able to just open their mouths and at least begin to either interact, start a conversation, or at least begin to approach things from the point of, this is something I'd like to talk about.
Right.
And I think that's very, very important at this stage with anything and everything. I think that it's absolutely necessary to be able to have the ability, the freedom, and the confidence to be able to ask questions and ask them well. We were talking earlier about Newsroom and that opening scene. And language aside, as I said, I think there was a lot of great points in that, because when we're informed about something, we have a better ability to be able to have an actual developed response, right? This isn't just some knee-jerk reaction. This is something we're spending time on. We're trying to be deliberate about it and trying to be as thoughtful as we can in mitigating any problems that may come up. But then at the same time, you got to make a decision. You've got to be able to do something or say something, and you've got to be able to move forward with that and be comfortable with the fact that, you know what, part of me's out there. Part of me's out there. You can do with it what you want. You can jump on it. You can encourage it. You can enable it. But for what it is, Matt, I want to just say how much I appreciate your confidence and your ability to speak to this matter. And I can't speak for all of our listeners, but I could say this: your passion is evident in your resolve to see Israel become who they are. And that's one of the things I value in our relationship. You are passionately resolved in matters that are important to you. So
absolutely.
Thank you for being who you are.
I would like to encourage our listeners to please educate yourselves on the situation beyond just what the talking heads on TV are telling you.
Right.
I'm gonna pose a series of questions that you won't hear mainstream media ask. And I want you to do your own investigation and find out the reasons for this, okay? The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Why is Egypt not throwing its border open to let all of the Gazans into Egypt? Why is Saudi Arabia not jumping to their aid and letting them? Why aren't they chartering flights to get all of the innocent Gazan civilians out? Why do you think that is? Go investigate that. Why is everybody throwing money at the problem? Everyone internationally throwing money at them, but no one's willing to take these people in. And I guarantee the answer is not racism. The answer is because they don't want the terrorists in their country, because they know that they're not all innocent civilians. Please go do your own research, dig in, and to what you said, and I'll end with this, I promise. What you said before about to think risks offending people and being controversial. You know, Dietrich Bonhoeffer had plenty of enemies in his time, and we hold him as a hero today. And he by no means was the only one. He was one of a minority, one of very few that stood up and said, this is wrong.
Yeah.
But we hold him as a hero today. So my challenge for our listeners is, which side of history will you be on? Which side of history will you say, I stood for this at the time? In Zechariah chapter 13, it says that once there is a great turning toward Yahweh and a great recognizing him, when he moves and he pours out his spirit on all people, those who were false prophets and false news propagators will try and hide, and their own parents will turn them in, saying that here is one of the ones who was false. And they'll try and deny it for the sake of the shame of what they did. Please be on the right side of history. Please investigate it for yourself. It is not a complicated situation. A very great 5-minute video that explains there would absolutely be peace in the Middle East if the militant terrorists would lay down their weapons. If Israel laid down their weapons, they would be absolutely annihilated overnight. If the other side laid down their weapons, there would be peace. No one would be annihilated. Everything would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is one side wants the other side dead. And it's really that simple. It is not a complicated situation. I don't care who tells you that. Yes, there's history. Yes, there are hurt feelings. Yes, Middle Easterners are kind of known for holding a grudge. But it's not a complicated situation. It really isn't. Please do your homework.
Well, with that said, we thank you for listening to today's podcast. We are the Bearded Bible Brothers, and we look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on this. You can disagree, agree, whatever the case may be, but we look forward to having a conversation with anyone and everyone about this. So that is beardedbiblebrothers@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.